And we are live. Hey, welcome back to the Weekly Roundup. Into February 2023, we're here already. Let's jump right in. The 4 core regrets. I've been recently doing an online course because, of course, I like to have my own continuing education, as well as reading articles. Like, basically, I end up in this spider web of research at 2 in the morning in my insomniacness when I start doing courses. There's the inner workings of my brain. But I came across this, I don't know if he's a doctor or not, so I'm only going to say doctor, but Daniel H. Pink is his name. He has done some TED Talks and stuff too, and he is the regret scientist. And he basically went around and collected, through talking with people, like 16,000 different regrets or something to that effect. And it was super fascinating, and I find it even more interesting as an entrepreneur because his words, not mine, but I think that this is poignant for how we sort of approach ourselves as a yogapreneur. When you look at the 4 core regrets, which I'll get to in a second, you create like this photographic negative of what a good life is. So if you know that something is bad, it's the dichotomy of reality, right? If this is bad, then this can be good. If there is nothing bad, you don't know what is good. If something can't be ugly, we don't know what's beautiful. There's Taoism for you as well. Like, it has to have both sides of the coin existent. So by studying regrets, you see like the negative of what a positive good life would be. And therefore you can start to discern and understand for yourself. And this is why I think this is such a yogic concept in a weird way. What is it that you actually value? Because we often talk in the YC here about living by your core values, having your core values for your business, et cetera, but how do you come up with them? And that was a question that had been asked to me a few months back, and I didn't have a really, really tight answer. So that's what sort of this triggered for me. Sometimes you come up with what your real core values are by knowing what your core regrets might be. So here's the thought. The 4 core regrets are I wrote them down, so I'm checking my desk here. Foundation regrets. So that would be if I had only done the work, is the thought. Boldness, if I had only taken the chance. Moral, if I had only done the right thing. And connection, if I had only reached out. And they're kind of all, you could say, very like the way those are worded, they're kind of all the same thing. But it's basically the antithesis of acting in your highest image. And one of the things, and why I think this is so powerful as an entrepreneur, is we get stuck, or what I see is yogapreneurs get stuck in the day-to-day work in their business. And they get accustomed and comfortable to the habitual rotation of how they run their business, relate with their staff, et cetera, that then there is a resistance to changing things, even when at your core, you know the thing you need to do. And a lot of coaching, what we realize is we don't offer some like massive piece of information that's like totally outside of the reality of the person we're coaching with. What we can do is help to highlight prioritization of that information and where to focus on and what the highest impact thing is, because we have a clean outside view of what's going on. And then a lot of it is more around how do we put it into action? Like we always say, knowledge isn't power, knowledge put into action is power. So like we also say, like the irony of a yoga studio is people are coming to a yoga studio to change something and improve something, but then the thing that people resist the most is change itself. As the studio owner, you have to gut check in your own yoga practice that you are inclusive of that sometimes. Culminating thought around this is a statement we used to make a few years back quite often because it was coming up a lot, was the moment you say, we do this thing the way we do it because it's the way we've always done it, you're dead. Which sounds maybe a little harsh, but that has been my experience. Anything you do, it should be because it's a forward vision, it's solving for something, it's improving something. that you know it's the right thing to do. So I don't know. I could keep ranting about this for a while, but I thought, what an interesting way to view your yogapreneurship. I want to hear what you guys have to say on it, though.
Well, it brings to mind the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know, right? And it's like when you are confronted with something that you need to change, you're more comfortable, even if you know it's not good. You're more comfortable in that position because it's something you know, even if it's something that is not right, is not great. The fear of the unknown, the fear of failure, the fear of whatever, in terms of making the change. And then another, when you said that, excuse me, to Josh, was it made me think when you were talking about making the change, is there is a concept that a friend of mine told me about. It's called the drift. And so if you think about a drift, you're in a boat, or like in a boat or in a trench or whatever, and everybody's in it together, and collectively you're drifting along. And it could be a miserable experience. It could be a happy experience, but it could, whatever it is, everybody's drifting along. And then one person realizes, hey, there could be a better way to do this, or I'm going to make a change. So that person slowly starts to climb out of the drift to make the change. And then what happens, it makes everybody else in the drift so uncomfortable that they pull the person back down in the drift, because that one person is highlighting, hey, we can make a change. And that's forcing everybody else to say, oh my gosh, if Terry can do it, then, oh my God, and so that rather than being there to lift people up, they literally pull people down because it makes them more comfortable. And I saw this happen to me when I decided to leave my very lucrative corporate job with all the bennies to become a Bikram yoga teacher. Is I had a couple of friends that were miserable in their jobs. They were my age. I was in my early 40s, miserable in their jobs, miserable in their life, and could not they were so unsupportive of me. Whereas like my yoga friends were like, yes, go for it. And it was really, really interesting. And I literally had to like cut ties with those friends because they were so not supportive of what I wanted to do. Even if I had failed miserably, it would have been me. So that really resonated for me when you said that, because it's an interesting concept. Vicky.
Yeah, your idea of the drift, that made me think of, I don't know how many of you guys went to Bikram's teacher training and remember all the words and pearls of wisdom he would come up with. One of the things, and they were quite mysterious, sometimes you didn't really understand what he meant by the darkest place in the world is underneath the lamp.
Under the lamp. Mm-hmm.
And one thing that he used to say was 1%, what do you say? 99% right is 100% wrong.
Yes.
So the 1% where you diverted in the beginning, you drifted by 1%, was going to get more and more wrong.
Yeah.
That, there's some truth in that. And it kind of goes back to Josh's, what he started with, which is the regrets, the foundational regret that you might have, like when you haven't done the work or laid the foundation in the correct way. That's when you get this drift. And this really brings to mind with me having a vision and a mission statement that you put some work and some effort into, and having some core values, sticking to them and bringing them up again and again, bringing them up with your team. That can be a way to, have them. You can lay that foundation later, even if you haven't done it already. It's never too late to have a great vision and mission, and to bring it up with people that can prevent getting that drift, bringing everyone onto the same course again.
Well, and to that point exactly, Vicky, I think the idea of the foundational regret being, if I had only done the work, right? It's this concept of like knowing what the thing was you needed to do, knowing that it would have gotten you what you wanted, and then not doing it. And that's like, straight up, I personally have struggled with this my whole life as well, with like the executive functioning decision making around like knowing the thing to do, but then transitioning the knowledge into action. It's funny because I can do a lot of action, but on the thing that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. But that's a whole nother detail as well. Now, that's just, I think every entrepreneur deals with that from time to time, but I've certainly spent a lot of personal introspection and effort and yogic work around streamlining that for myself. But of this, like doing the work makes me think, as you're saying, Vicky, that I think last roundup we talked about this too, right? For every 10 minutes that you spend in planning and organizing, you save an hour in effort down the road. So the idea, if I had only done the work, also does kind of tie into the concept of like doing the right thing and the hard thing now, eating the frog, Terry likes to bring up all the time. Now it's like you're putting effort here because it's buying you saved time and stress there. And if you don't, then that's the experience you have. If you didn't do that, then you're like, oh, if I'd only done the work. So I kind of feel a little bit like if you're looking at this critically at your business and you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm looking at my KPI report, this is the result I'm getting, and it feels like this isn't improving the way that I want, and I'm not able to pay myself as much, and I have this stress around my business. It's a bit of a punch in the face, but I mean, that's entrepreneurship 101 right there. Did you do the thing? Like, what if the KPI hasn't changed? Did you put the work and the effort in to make the thing happen? So that sounds negative, but it can be empowering. And it's why, for me, it's why I'm doing coaching now. And for me, it's why I hire coaches, because to me, that is the other person in my corner that I can lean on, that can just stare me in the face and be like, you got to do this thing. Like, that's worth me having a coach, and has been throughout the years. And that's exactly what the coaches offer you as a yogapreneur as well. Is not just information, but being able to say, this number is not where we need it to be and where you want it to be. How do we get there? And now let's do the work to make that happen, basically.
And I would say almost even worse than that, your example of KPIs is not even doing the KPIs, right? Ignoring the KPIs.
Yes.
And just not even knowing what your numbers are. I mean, knowing some of them, but not even knowing the numbers, and just like it's the proverbial ostrich in the sand, right? And it's like, to me, that's even, you have these numbers, you don't even know what the numbers are. Yeah, you can get your sales number. That's an easy one. Everybody's got that one. But the retention, all those things, putting in the work to get those numbers, so that, again, to Vicky's point, you have a direction of where to go. Otherwise, you're just going in all different directions when it comes to that. So, hashtag KPIs, guys. Teresa.
I agree with all of that. And I think it's important to recognize that when you have this regret, to not let the regret kind of be a barrier to that. It's normal for this stuff to happen. It's normal for you to wish you had done the work and you didn't succeed at this one thing, but then don't let that be your normal, and just let it be a barrier for you not to do it differently the next time. Because it's kind of like the way I was thinking about it is like, Vicky was talking about veering off just a little bit and it getting bigger, but you have to realize that you veered off and pull it back on track, right? And not let your regrets make you say, well, I did it wrong, so it's just going to keep driving this way. I can't stop it now, because you can always stop it and redirect. And it makes me think of like the whole monkey mind concept. Like it's a constant battle. You're focusing on one thing, and all of a sudden you're thinking about last week, and then you bring it back to the present, and then it goes over here, and then you bring it back to the present. So it's the same kind of thing where you get off track, you have your regrets, but then you set them aside. We're going to move forward. Now we're going to drive it back to more in alignment with your mission and things like that we've already talked about. What can I do better? What can I change? I didn't do the work. How can I do the work next time? That kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Teresa, I love what you're saying. It's like I just wrote a little note here as you were saying, basically, like you have to let the regret empower you, not disempower you. That's the difference. I really feel like that's the entrepreneur, not entrepreneur, that's the yogapreneur skill, right? Being an entrepreneur and being a yogapreneur is like choosing to get punched in the face every day and then get up and doing it again the next day anyways. But why yogapreneur is different than just entrepreneur is that the definition of an entrepreneur is someone who takes higher than normal risk to try to build something, to try to build a business. But a yogapreneur is the person who looks at that equation holistically, including themselves, and is empowered to grow and continually acquire the necessary knowledge, skills, and action empowerment to do the thing for the higher impact that their mission, whatever that is. That's being a yogapreneur. So yeah, the regret needs, if you find yourself thinking that, like, it needs to empower you. It made me think of, and I hate to bring it back to Crazy Bikram, but like some of the dude's sayings, and actually Putabi Joyce had a saying not dissimilar to this. Bikram's was, the biggest problem in human life is no problem. Putabi Joyce's saying was, the reason you can't do it is because it doesn't hurt you. And which made no sense when I was 15. But now I'm like, holy shit, like it makes perfect sense. In business, your problems that you encounter, or down the line, the regret that you have about, did I do the work on this how I could have or not? Did I do my best sort of thing? Those are the things that help you build grit. They're the things that make you stronger. That's like the type of experience that you can't gain any other way. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. Going back to what Terry said, we often talk in business about momentum. One of the things, if I get hired to look at a business because someone wants to purchase it, a yoga business, one of the things that we try to decipher, and it's not always easy, is the direction of their momentum. Are they growing? Are they shrinking? What's the speed of that? Like how much velocity do they have? Or are they just stagnant? And what's very interesting is we often are able to identify that a business looks flat, but actually it has negative momentum. It's slowly deteriorating. It's just doing it at a pace that they can't see it yet. Those are good businesses to buy because you can negotiate heavier. They're not a problem yet, but we know that like the people behind the scenes aren't into it anymore. That aside, yoga business in Western culture is this collision of Eastern mind, Western mind, philosophically. And language is a place that we would see this play out. When we talk about something, we generally speak in a linear fashion, from here to here, straight line. The story starts with this person, and then this happens, and then this, and then here's the conclusion. A lot of the stories, and it's why reading, if you read Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, for example, or I have a bunch of comic books from India for my kids, the comic books of the stories of Arjuna for my son. And they are the weirdest fucking like the weirdest shit happens in these books. They make no sense. And it took me forever to realize it's because they're circular. The story is, here's how you understand why being a true friend is good. And then the next thing that happens is the guy talks about how he doesn't have any friends and he's lonely. And then he goes to get ice cream. You're like, what? Like, where are we going? It doesn't, but it eventually comes back around. It just takes forever to get there. This is a super long-winded way of saying, when you put something linear and something circular together, you get a spiral. And I think that is, in business and in life, the epiphany that humanity will have is that things move in spirals. You're never going to just go in a straight line between any 2 points, but you do need direction. But you're going to oscillate around. You're going to spiral around. Your blood spirals in your body. Energy of your kundalini spirals up your spine. Everything moves in a spiral. So the other way to say momentum in your business is, which direction are you spiraling? This ties into your regret, because realizing that you have a regret on something can spiral you down, and you can let it pull you that direction, or it can spiral you up by empowering you to have clarity around where you need to go and what you need to do.
And then since we
Well,
watched Interstellar when we were out in California, let's add in that fifth dimension, and it's just mind-blowing, right? And when you think about that being
oh my
circular,
God.
time, it can be, that's the whole thing of like time travel, and it's all circular. It's so then if you really want to go into that Lord, like woo, 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 then think about what you just said, and then throw in the dimension of time and space. And you got Q. Who does
Yeah.
Q? Do you know who I'm talking about? Q?
I know who Q is. Yep.
You know who Q is? If you know who Q is, post in the comments below. We'll be real telling who knows who Q is. We're not going to say, if you know what I mean by Q, post in the comments. But yeah, that really can then you can kind of start just really spiraling out into some very interesting thoughts. Yeah, I love it.
I don't even smoke weed, but this is why. We would go way in the stratosphere. Interstellar, best movie ever. But you know what you're making me think of too, Terry, around this is, and in the 2019 Business Summit, we talked a lot about this because we wrote out some affirmations and stuff too. In the Business Summit last year, we had like a daily journaling task, which was associated with this as well. This year's Yoga Business Summit, Tangent, is about to launch like next week, the first dibs. First dibs is going to be given to the people who have RSVP'd to the event in the Mighty Network. That's the only group that's going to get the first dibs, and there will be a limited number of tickets at the price point that's there. To let the cat out of the bag, we've added an extra day because that was the request most people have, and we need it. We've negotiated with La Jolla to make the food situation go from like it was awesome to like next level. So, and a few other exciting things as well. So it's going to be extra special.
Snap them up. Snap them up. It's going to be so good.
Yeah.
Oh my God, you guys, this is the golden ticket. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. You got to get the golden ticket.
It's the golden ticket. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to the events, go to the top of the screen, go to events, click on the events thing, find the Yoga Business Summit for this year, RSVP that you want to go. And that's how we're going to decipher who gets the first dibs. Okay, that aside though, time, one of the things that we talked about in this journaling is the idea of, as an entrepreneur, you are the accumulation of the 5 people that you spend the most time around. So it's why it's powerful for you to do things like go to the summit or be in the Yogapreneur Collective, et cetera, so that you're surrounded by other people who are also empowering around their business and not dragging you down. Vicky's got to go for her yoga class. Peace, Vicky. Thanks. It's a good excuse. And you are also, as a human being, the accumulation of all of your thoughts. So if you're the accumulation of your thoughts, the extended detail is that your thoughts do not exist at any one moment. They exist in all moments of time. Therefore, when we journal and when we build affirmation, we look at, if I'm going 3 years into the future and my business looks like this and my life looks like this and my personal time looks like this, and this is how much money I have, we project there, but then write that out into a statement, which is present tense, because your mind doesn't know that your mind doesn't exist in time. Your thoughts don't exist in time. So one of the tricks for like, how do you spiral the right direction? How do you gain momentum? How do you take these, like this foundational regret you might be viewing, and start to give yourself a new narrative? It's to literally write it out and say, like, what's the antithesis of this? So instead of focusing on the regret, use it to empower you to write out, this is who I am and who I'm going to become. And then once that's down, the question becomes, how are you not that person now?
Oh my gosh, Josh, I got a great one for this affirmation. I didn't even know I realized it. Creating negative spirals and regret is, after the last I do, my mantra became forever fry. 7, right? But that's exactly, I mean, it worked so far.
Forever fry. And if you're not sure what Terry's referring to as a 7, that's because we had a special surprise workshop one of the nights that was at the summit last year. I'm not even going to tell you what it is, but that's how we found out this Terry is a 7. So there you go.
And if you know what that's referring
Terry
to,
had posted in the comments.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You had posted in the comments.
Terry asked the question in the chat that you guys can't see. If you attended the summit last year, you still have to RSVP. The RSVP is who's getting first dibs.
Okay.
So even if you came last year, go RSVP to that, because that's the list that we're going to say, here you go. You've got this much time and there's these many tickets on the first dibs.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that are in there. Other things that are included in the summit. This is the big announcement. I haven't written it all out on there yet. There's going to be a pre-webinar before the summit so that there's no time while you're at the summit wasted talking about housekeeping shit or getting your numbers together or whatever. All of that will take place before you even arrive. And you will have a pre-coaching call and a post-coaching call with a coach to make sure that you are prepared for the summit and that your follow-up afterwards is there. And you get to be part of the private summit crew, which will be in the Mighty Network. And part of that will be that we will do a quarterly sort of mastermind style check-in on the goals that you set at the summit. So there'll be some continuity built into this as well, and have the accountability and the coaches there as well. So those are some things that are new. Every year we make sure that we're upping the ante on the summit to make it the most high impact possible.
Awesome.
All right. I think that it was kind of a good segue. Terry, you had an interesting situation that we should maybe jump in on discussion on.
So
it ties into these regrets too.
Yeah. Had a call with one of my clients yesterday, and this came up. She was asking me some advice about this topic, and it really goes to inclusivity. It goes to prejudging people and making judgments about people based upon your perception. Even in biasing and bias, whether it's racial bias, whether it's a physical bias, whatever the bias is. And we like to think in a yoga studio that we're immune to that. Well, my friends, I'm here to tell you it happens, and even in yoga studios. So the situation was, this client has one of our YC members has a client who the teachers were coming to her and not complaining, but in a caring and compassionate way, however, that it was dangerous for her to practice because they felt she was anorexic and that they were worried about it and they were uncomfortable teaching her and what happens if she passes out and blah, blah, blah. So it kind of became this whole thing at the studio, to the point where the studio director actually asked the young woman to get a note from her doctor saying it was okay to practice. So would we do the same thing if someone was obese? Do we ask obese people to get a note from their doctor? I mean, everybody signs the liability waiver, so you are covered there. And why make that judgment? And if you're uncomfortable teaching someone, don't project that onto the person. Find out why it's making you uncomfortable. And I had a somewhat similar situation at a studio I used to teach at. Same thing. Everybody was very, very concerned about this woman who everybody thought was anorexic. Well, she wasn't. She just happened to be one of these people that literally struggles to keep weight on, right? There are people in the world that is an issue. So a lot of judgment, a lot of things around that. And yet at the same time, we wouldn't do that for other types of perception, what we look at people and make judgments about. So just want to sort of throw that out there, and for people to think about is, if there's an issue like that, what I told my teachers is they sign a waiver, right? It's not our call. They've made the decision. They're adults. They understand what they're getting, what it is, and they continue to come. Who are we to say we're concerned about you? It's like, that's, I think, a little bit, for me, that's really crossing a line. I mean, you can argue against that, but if it's a basic, and that's how I feel. So Josh.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I think that one of the experiences that I've had, especially over the last decade coaching with studios everywhere, is the intention behind some of these things like we're describing are positive. We don't realize the judgmentalness of them. The truth is, yoga studios, not all, but many, are very judgmental places, very judgmental. We judge people on their performance. We judge people on like just all sorts of things. And the practical shift that I would suggest is worry about what you are offering them. We're in the service industry rather than what they're doing to you, sort of thing. So just using this as the example, this is a self-love equation. If you just really love yourself and you feel really healthy, then you tend to calibrate towards the things that are healthy for you. So, it's not your job as a yoga teacher to judge a person if they are anorexic, bulimic, or whatever. It is your job to help them have introspection and them to feel welcome in a community and to know themselves and to feel good in their body and empowered in who they are. That's what you're selling. So this is, again, it's another reason why the whole like yoga for everybody statement is, one, the worst marketing statement ever, but two, very often actually bullshit, because then things like this, the same place that would have that on their website. I know that, I don't think that was the case in this one, but just we've seen that that'll be on the website, but then the actions that are taken are not congruent with that. Good, Teresa.
I agree with all of this. I'll just start out. Every time I start talking, I'll just say I agree with all of this. One of our values in our studio was always that we strive to help others so they can help themselves, because that happens a lot, I think, in the yoga industry, where we want to fix everybody. We see people in our classes, and like Terry's example, I have to help her. It's not in her best interest to be here. It's not safe for her to be here. And you're trying to fix her and decide what's best for her. And so, kind of tied in with what Josh just said, your goal as a yoga instructor would be more to empower them to make those decisions for themselves, to help them with clarity, or to help them clear their minds, help them get stronger, help them get more flexible mentally, physically, do whatever they need to do to get to a place where they can help themselves. Because it's kind of like, too, that whole, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You just, they will just keep coming, and eventually they'll reach a point where they can make the decisions that are best for themselves. They're not at that point yet, and that's why they're there. So keeping that in mind too.
Yeah, it's really well said, Teresa. And also too, I mean, obviously, if someone comes to you and says, I'm having this issue, this, how, and is asking for your help or guidance or assistance, then that's also a different story. And again, tread lightly, because I always preface it, I'm not a doctor, right? So that can also be that you have to kind of tread lightly there. But if someone really comes to you with something, then if you feel there's you can say, well, these are some resources for you. And a couple of studio, I forgot who it was that I was talking to, they actually have at their studio a list of like service providers within their community for mental health. So here's based upon whatever, it's like, keep coming and doing yoga. We can help you with modifications or whatever is necessary. And if you're interested, here's a list of service providers for you that, and so I thought that was a really, really empowering way for the studio, is just like, these are people that we know, like, and trust. A lot of them were like, community agencies and not-for-profit agencies and things like that they knew personally, they knew the people involved or had perhaps used the services themselves. So I really thought that was a really good idea, is to have that available, because a lot of people do come to yoga because of above the neck issues, right? What's going on in their lives to help with anxiety and depression and all kinds of things. So it makes sense maybe to have some resources in community that you're aware of that you can refer people to. So I thought that was a really great idea to have. They had it at the front desk, and they just had it, and they would hand it to people. Yeah.
I had the personal experience very early in my teaching and yoga management career. We had a student came to the studio I was managing. They were very, very obese, like trouble walking. They were very not welcomed into other places. They had enough courage, let's say, to come in and try the place that we were at. A friend brought them. We did everything right up front in terms of being welcoming. I had to have a couple of private sessions with them, with one of the senior teachers as well, to sort of modify the class because their mobility was that limited. And that was fine for about 6 months. And then our teaching staff started complaining to me as a manager that while the class was doing one thing, they were just kind of doing their own thing. They were like just doing the modified class, the modified postures the way that they enjoyed, but it was obvious they could do more. And this got to the point that they all rallied me to have the conversation with them and be like, okay, like to kind of push them to start doing more. And the person canceled the membership and left, and we never saw them again. And to this day, we're talking about regrets, like it fucking hurts my heart to think about. What a fuck up on our part. It was the wrong thing to do. And who is I to do that? Who are we to even look at it that way? That's the judgment we're talking about. The person showing up and doing something and is happy. Leave them the fuck alone. On one hand, right? But where that came from, and here's my question for you guys, Carol and Teresa, be curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this, but like I hate this word, in the traditional yoga world, whatever the hell that means, right? But in the old school yoga world, like where I came out of way back in the day and stuff too, there was this element of really tough love of the yoga guru, like just straight calling you on your bullshit and it just cutting like a knife, but it often being very true. But I think that these individual people coming from India in the Brahmin caste, like had this unique ability to know how and when to interject that so that it had the right repercussion. The question is, that's why we would challenge that person in the story I'm telling that I went through. And I think that some of us from the old school, like that was part of the attraction to the whole thing, was the truth, the sort of tough love part. So that's the question. Is there where does that exist in it now? Because that's a tough one.
If you had that conversation today, Josh, what would you have said with the hindsight and clarity and maturity in that same situation? What might you have done? I'd be curious.
I wouldn't have said anything. I would have said, you're doing fucking great, man. How do you feel?
Yeah.
What's changed? How are you feeling better? What's not changing? This isn't changing. Cool. Here's something you might consider. If you ever want more help, we're here. Let me sign you up for class tomorrow. That's it. Yeah. Like, what's the equation? Consistency, frequency, accuracy, intensity, in that order. Just stay consistent. Let's see if we can get you a little more frequent. Accurate is just the alignment part of it. And intensity is way the hell down the line. That's it. Yeah, but the question being the tough love part, like, although that's like an attraction to yoga, how do you, is there space for that now? Is there a way to build that into your formula for your studio? That's where things do feel like they've changed. Circa 2004, one of my first mentors, she did all sorts of crazy shit in the class. I loved it. I'm sure in hindsight now, I'm sure it deterred a butt ton of people. There's a ton of people that took her class and were like, fuck this lady, I'm never coming back again. She didn't care. Yeah. So I don't know.
I think it depends a little bit on, like you said in your example just now, on the style of the instructor. There are going to be some instructors that are more tough love-ish, and they will draw a certain crowd and they'll love it, and then they won't draw another crowd. It's, you know, it's the ideal client. They draw this one type of client and that's who they work with. And so I think that that can still exist. And then I think that to a degree also, knowing your clients, because I'll do tough love with some of my clients, you know, because I know that I've known them long enough that I know that they can take it. I know they want to go further. I know that they're not happy where they are. And I know that they'll hold back if I don't give them that tough love. So you can't always read that with people, but, you know, to a certain degree you can. And you know, just knowing if they're happy where they are, or if they want to go further, or if there's an issue that they're dancing around instead of dealing with it, knowing those things can help you know when you can apply that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And I think too, to Teresa's point, is this can also come back to your class descriptions too. I'm having a lot of conversations about class descriptions and making them. And I know in the YC, we do have a resource if you're on one of the membership plans that talking about a formula for class descriptions and teacher bios, is making sure that if it is a tougher class, that it's very clear in the class description. And also had a conversation with a client this week on this topic is I try to avoid the words like advanced or, you know, modifications, and instead of saying modification, options, right? Because modification can imply that, oh, I have to modify because of something, as opposed to here are some options. But really nailing in those class descriptions so that you know that this is a rigorous, whatever, heated power flow, rigorous. It involves some potentially inversion, a lot of arm, you know, things like that, so that people also know what the type of class is, so that when they show up to take class, that they kind of know what they're getting into. And that's another way to help guide people, particularly new people, to the best class, particularly if you offer different styles of yoga. Like if you're Bikram, you're Bikram, right? It's like, this is what you get. But if you have variety styles, really making it clear in the class descriptions. And it is amazing because I think we've talked about this before. All of us have practiced all over the place, right? And it's amazing how often class description you show up for the class and it's completely,
there's nothing like it. Yeah.
There's nothing like it. And this is a pet peeve of mine. And I think this is a lazy teacher, and you guys can chime in on this and chime in below. Is for me, I do not like it when the teacher comes and say, okay, what do you want to work on today? First off, that it's not the class description. It's not like, and second off, I just feel that that's really sort of, then they're just, it's like, yeah, I just don't like that. I think that to me is lazy. What do you guys think?
I don't know if I'd say lazy is the word, but that to me, I agree that is not the approach in a yoga studio that I would coach to, because as a student, if you take it in the extreme and I'm like having a bad day and it was hard for me to get there, and maybe it's only my second or third class, what do you want to work on today? I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
Like I want you to occupy my brain so I'm not thinking about the other shit, and I want to feel good afterwards. I'm not going to pipe up and say that. And
then you open yourself. What if you say one person wants this, and all of a sudden then half the class is like, well, I don't want to work on that. You know, then it becomes just like
that happens. I was going to say that happens here a lot. Teachers say exactly that. What do you guys want to do today? And 95% of the class keeps their mouth shut, because people do. And then always, every time I've heard this, one of the, regular students pipes in, and always one of them says, let's do hip opening, which is me as a stiff guy. Like, I hate it. Like, and if I'm in a bad mood, I almost want to walk out of the class. I'm like, if we're doing a hip opening class that's supposed to be a power flow, like, I'm leaving. I never actually leave. I never actually say that. But like, to your point, that's the last thing on my list ever. So now the whole class is dictated by that one person. I think that speaks to, this goes back to the tough love sort of question. That goes back to the teacher's skill level, comfort level, reading the room level, And so it's no shade on them, but it's just like, that's something I think you mature out of, you know, once you're confident in teaching your class and offering what you do. And once you're actually not teaching your class and you start teaching the class in front of you, when you make that transition, then you don't ask stuff like that because that's not relevant. But the class descriptions, the tough love part, I think all of it comes down to like non-judgment again. So these are very attached. Giving tough love is like offering appropriate challenge when the person's ready and reading that situation correctly. That's not the same as being dissatisfied with somebody's performance or how they look or whatever else, and then confronting them on that and who they are as a person, because who the hell are you, sort of thing. Wow, we went way deep today on a few things. Yeah.
We did.
We need a different show. We need a Friday evening bottle of wine version of the roundup to.
Seven loves that.
Yeah. Carol, what number were you?
I was a 5, the exact opposite of Terry. So.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we get along so well, I think.
7, 5. I was an 8. Jenna she did hers afterwards with her. I think she was a 2, which is the exact opposite of me. Jenna and I are the exact opposite in everything, period. So it wasn't a surprise. I was like, I'm sure you're going to be a 2 because that's the opposite of what I am. And she was. Yeah. You guys, you better RSVP to this thing because I think this workshop with these numbers that we're talking about was so fun. We'll probably have to do it again at this summit. So if you don't know what we're talking about, RSVP for the first
fun.
dibs.
Yeah,
and,
and then my wingmen were 6 and 8. So
my wingman, instead of saying wing, Jerry's got a whole story on it. I love it. All right, you guys. Unless there's anything else, coaches, to add, I think that's good for today. Have a great rest of your Friday. Have a great weekend. Go do some yoga.
Make sure you RSVP for the summit if you want one of those golden tickets, and they really are going to be golden. So
golden tickets.
And
I'm renaming them from first dibs to the golden tickets right now.
Golden tickets. Golden tickets. And keep in mind that when that thing goes out, you got to hit that buy now button because it is very limited. So how many spots do we actually have, Josh? What's the max?
I convinced them to rent us the house as well, which is awesome. So we have 3 more rooms. So total beds would be 20.
And I'm no ERT on the beach for us. That came up last year when we were talking at the recap.
On the beach?
No ERT or hurt, whatever that is. Yurt. We talked about putting a yurt on the beach.
Oh, the yurt
for the coaches.
Oh, I told the coaches that this year we'll just put a yurt on the beach and they can stay right there. No, I don't think I'll do that. Although I would stay on a yurt on the beach. I digress. Only 20 spots. This thing is sold out every single year, every single time it's done, and right away. First dibs is going to go fast. So heads up on that. It's coming out in this next week here. Make sure to go RSVP in the events tab, and then we'll have more to say about it coming up soon. But have a great weekend. Go save some lives. Go do some yoga. Appreciate you guys.
Bye.
Peace.